Okay, I'm streaming. Don't leak your social security number.
I don't even know it off the top of my head.
I don't either.
I grew up, and Dad was like, "You gotta know this off the top of your head." I'm like, "Buddy, slow down."
I think I had to get a new one like when I was 18, so
Why?
I don't remember.
If someone fucking stalked you,
Either someone stole my identity or my parents lost my card. I don't know.
that's crazy.
But now it's in my house somewhere that I won't say
Of
to the
course,
public.
I know where it is.
Up your butt and around the corner.
No, I put it there.
You remember what happened last time?
Um, they were. They brought this woman, he brought this woman to heaven
Uh huh. And what happened?
because they're trying to find the baby daddy
Yeah, they're trying to find the baby
for her
daddy, and
fetus spirit.
everyone was accusing Pei Ming, but then they were like, no, she's too ugly for Pei Ming to fuck her.
Oh, bro.
And then they were like, it has to be a male official in here, and then she accused it being Shilian.
Oh, right. Yes.
She,
Yes.
the last line is, I said the man is you. Alright, chapter 47. If Lan Chang had declared something like, the one who killed me was you, it still wouldn't have been as much of a bolt out of the blue. Shilian was practically knocked out by her thunderbolt. Me? Upon the throne, even Junwu's hand seemed to have slipped from its usual spot supporting his temple. The heavenly officials were shocked into silence, and they immediately turned their heads towards the emperor. However, Junwu's hand had quickly righted itself, and he'd already resumed his usual somber pose with his head on his hand. The officials turned their heads back to Shilian. Was this it? The third banishment to manifest before the eyes of all? Shilian felt his soul shaking, and he forced himself to swallow the habitual I can't get erect alibi, which almost escaped through his teeth. That was only ever an offhand comment used to easily excuse himself, not appropriate for deployment in circumstances such as these. Besides, there was already private gossip circulating the upper court about various martial gods and their attitudes towards women. When Feng Xin saw women, he respectfully stayed far away, and Lan Chenchou blushed the moment he saw them. Mu Qing refused to even acknowledge ugly women, and while Pei Shu was expressionless when he saw women, who knew what was actually going through his head? Xuan Yizhen didn't ever seem to have women on his mind, but Pei Ming's was constantly consumed by them. If Shilian tried his usual excuse now, no doubt his name would be added to this list. Miss Lanchang, please calm yourself, Shilian pleaded earnestly. There is definitely no such possibility. Lanchang was glaring so hard her eyes were larger than bells. Yes, there is. It's you, the Crown Prince of Shenle. Even though this woman had died after Shilian's first ascension, and the timing could perhaps match up, wouldn't the man himself know better than anyone whether he'd met her before? Amidst the circulating whispers, Shilian's expression and tone grew solemn. Miss, I may not be a saint, but I still know a faithful heart. If I did not love someone, I would never cross any such lines with them, he said sternly. If I did, I
He's
would never
demisexual.
shut up. If I did, I would never allow that person to suffer any speck of grief, even if I had to beg and collect scraps, or busk and perform on the streets to support my family. You are in the palace of divine might. Do not speak falsehoods. Shi Qingxuan piped up as well. If it really was His Highness who committed such a deed, why would he bring this ghost Jie to the heavens to confront everyone? And why has Miss Lan Chang only now recognized him? Just think about it. It makes no sense. It was easy to see as much, but with such a spectacle to be had, who cared? The crowd maintained a reserved attitude, and an official even blindly hypothesized, perhaps His Highness lost his memory, so he doesn't remember the things he's done. Honestly, it's more believable he's bold enough to think she wouldn't recognize him after 800 years. Shilian was speechless and cautioned the crowd. The crowd, my lords, to prove something is impossible by fabricating something even more inconceivable is a dangerous path to walk. Feng Shin looked like he wanted to say something, but also like he couldn't make up his mind. In the end, he remained silent. Jun Wu cleared his throat. Shenle, how many golden belts did you once have in your possession? Shilian put his hand to his forehead. Too many, at least 10? Wu Qing answered flatly. Over 40. Each with different embroidery and patterns. He only realized the comment was inappropriate after the words left his lips, and he quickly shut up. Instantly, some of those present remembered that Mu Cheng had been Shilian's personal attendant and taking care of his daily needs, which was how he knew such details. Many of the officials couldn't help but think, counting golden belts alone, over 40. This Highness the Crown Prince really had once lived an extraordinarily luxurious life. Even Shilian himself felt rather embarrassed when thinking on it. Back then, he'd changed into a different extravagant ensemble every day, and his belts had changed every time to match whatever outfit he wore. Unlike now, where in an entire year he only wore 3 sets of clothing over and over again. Those 3 sets all looked exactly the same, too. At a cursory glance, people likely thought him so poor that he only had 1 set of clothing at all. Junwu asked Shilian, "And where are they now? Do you remember?" Shilian and Feng Xin were both stumped. Shilian rubbed his forehead. Not really. We're discussing things from 800 years ago, after all. I've long forgotten where they disappeared to. It wasn't because they had been tossed out. At the time, he and Feng Xin often pawned things off whenever their funds grew tight. Too many things had been sold off, and he really couldn't remember whether any belts had been left at the end. Feng Xin didn't have the heart to discuss this subject in detail, but said nonetheless, the golden belt might not have been a gift. Perhaps it was picked up somewhere. Junwu didn't seem to actually expect Shilian to remember either. Shenle, I remember that your cultivation method demands a body of purity, lest your spiritual power be significantly damaged. Yes, Shilian confirmed. Wow, so I was right, Shi Qingxuan piped up again. Just looking at His Highness, I could tell he must have cultivated that kind of path. If that's the case, never mind knocking anyone up. I bet he's never even held...
called him a virgin!
If that's the case, never mind knocking anyone up. I bet he's never held anyone's hand. Shilian was about to say, that's right, but his mind suddenly presented him with the memory of a pale, slender hand as cool as jade.
Whoa.
It made a striking contrast against the bright red wedding veil and a thin red thread knotted about its 3rd finger. The affirmation stuck in his throat, no longer able to roll out. Everyone in the hall stared at him intently. With one simple look, it was obvious his silence meant Shi Qingxuan's declaration was untrue. But never holding anyone's hand was too low of a standard. Even if hands had been held, it wasn't such a big deal. Shi Qingxuan immediately added, even if he's held hands, he must have never kissed anyone before. Again, Shilian wanted to say, that's right, but this time, endless streams of crystalline air bubbles suddenly floated before his eyes. As the translucent beads dispersed through the water, he saw an exceptionally handsome face, eyes closed, a shapely forehead lined by a widow's peak, beautiful to behold. This time, not only was he unable to squeeze out a single word, his entire face flushed bright red. Every heavenly official in the hall understood in an instant, and dry coughs sounded all around. Shi Qingxuan was starting to regret at saying anything. He knocked his fan over his own head once, and secretly passed a message to Shilian through their private communication array. Sorry about that, Your Highness. I only wanted to convince everyone that you're really the ascetic sort, but I hadn't realized you weren't. So you've indulged in such experiences. I really couldn't tell. That last statement shattered Shilian's will. He choked out with difficulty. Don't say any more. That was an accident. Junwu pressed a fist against his lips, clearing his throat loudly. Very good. You have not violated your vows in these intervening years, correct? Shilian finally let out a breath of relief. That's right. Then this will be easy, Junwu stated. I have a sword here. Yanzhen. Jun? I think it's Yanzhen. It possesses a particular ability. Should the blood of a virgin flow upon it, it shall not be stained, but become brighter as it is washed. Take a drop of your blood and let it fall upon the blade, and we shall see the truth. So he has a fucking virgin telling sword.
This is insane. Why does he have that?
I know, right? Although it had been common knowledge for years that Junwoo had a hobby of collecting rare and strange swords, the heavenly officials still thought to themselves, why does my lord have all these messed up swords?
This
What's even
guy's
the
a
use in collecting them?
kinkster, dude. This guy's a kinkster.
Shilian himself was feeling more and more nonplussed by the situation and only wanted to end it as soon as possible. Ling Wen brought forth the sensual Yanjun sword and immediately slid the blade across Shilian's hand. Countless eyes watched intently, and Shi Qingchuan clapped. Good! Case closed! Drops of blood slid past the blade, leaving not a trace behind, as expected. The proof was as solid as the mountains, and the crowd could only drop the subject. Ah, I see. Then who could it be? Their tone was lackluster, dripping with disappointment. Ling Wen turned to Lan Chang politely. Miss, please tell us honestly the identity of the heavenly official in question. The fetus spirit in your womb is restless, and your powers aren't strong enough to contain it. Only its blood-bound father can claim and discipline it. Before he could finish, Lan Chang unexpectedly pointed at Ling Wen and cried, You! That man is you! Ling Wen was speechless. Ling Wen had probably come directly from his temple to attend this sudden meeting, and was currently in the form of a man. He was baffled to suddenly be named the child's father. The heavenly officials sputtered and Pei Ming chortled. Noble G, did you even finish tending to your reports before you went and found a nice girl to knock up? This was probably what they called instant karma. Ling Wen shook his head and gracefully declined Shiwudu's compassionate gesture of giving his good nephew a congratulatory red money packet. Ling Wen's expression calmed. I haven't finished, and neither do I have the time. After such a riotous back and forth, and after Lan Chang hurled accusations at a number of officials, naturally no one believed her anymore. Feng Xin couldn't watch any longer, and concluded grumpily, I get it. This ghost woman was completely crazy from the start, and is only here to throw blame. She's come to cause trouble on purpose. Lan Chang cackled, sounding more and more like a crazy hag as she continued. If she did continue, who knew who she'd accuse next? The heavenly officials changed their tune. Yeah, who knows? Maybe that golden belt was stolen. To be fair, I also have more than one golden belt. I actually can't be sure how many I have exactly, and I don't remember if I've stored them properly. Lan Chang wouldn't let anyone off so easily, however. Putting her hands on her hips, she screamed at the crowd. What? Trying to get away? Too late. Not a chance. Is it you? Is it you? Or is it you? At this point, it was obvious she was pointing fingers randomly. Even Ming Yi, who was silently standing in a corner focusing on chewing whatever his cheeks were stuffed with, was indicated as the father at one point. It was chaos in the great hall, and everyone was shirking responsibility left and right. Take her away, take her away. Don't let her spout any more nonsense. Gigi, you're not my type. Don't you slander me. This is downright outrageous. Junwoo waved his hand, and a junior official came to collect Lan Chang. Even as she was dragged out of the Palace of Divine Might, she continued to scream and laugh shrilly. The officials within the hall returned to their assigned positions, their hearts still pounding as their heads throbbed. At first, everyone had thought the matter didn't involve them, and they only came for a good show. Now, they weren't so sure whether they would be the ones getting a bucket of crap dumped over their heads. This might even wind up landing themselves a new play in the mortal realm, starring alongside a ghostly lady love with gaudy makeup and a ghostly son who had murdered thousands. Sensing the danger, they all slapped their hands in exasperated helplessness. There's no way to investigate this case. I think she's simply wrong in the head. No need to investigate. It'd be a waste of time. Just lock her up. This could very well be the ghost realm mucking about on purpose. Shilian disagreed, however. On the way here, Miss Lan Chang was quite self-aware, so why did she suddenly grow erratic the moment she entered the Palace of Divine Might? I'm afraid it isn't something that can be brushed off by calling her wrong in the head. Thus, the crowd broke down and divided into two sides to debate and argue. In the end, the conclusion was still that never-changing, we'll see, we'll see. After the meeting was dismissed, Shilian bid farewell to Shi Qingchuan, who promised he'd descend in a few days to visit and hang out, then walked out of the Palace of Divine Might, sighing to himself. They say the Palace of Ling Wen is inefficient, but it can't be helped. Every time we gather to discuss anything, there's so much noise and ambiguity, and in the end, the conclusions were never concrete. How can the Palace of Ling Wen accomplish anything when this is what we give them to work with? Just then he sensed someone approaching from behind, and he turned to see Feng Xin. Slightly taken aback, he hadn't even greeted Feng Shen before Feng Shen hastily gave him a warning under his breath. "Watch out for Mu Ching." Shilian hushed his voice as well. "Mu Ching?" "That ghost woman reacted oddly when he entered the hall. Like she was afraid of him," Feng Shen said. "I don't care to pry into other people's personal affairs, but in any case, watch yourself." He hurried off after having his say, leaving Shilian standing in place. Shilian waited until Feng Shen was gone before he started walking again. Even though he hadn't shown as much, Shilian had actually paid close attention to every heavenly official's minute behaviors, as well as Lan Cheng's reactions. Naturally, he hadn't missed Mu Ching. However, he didn't think the father of the fetus spirit was likely to be Mu Ching. Shilian couldn't imagine him doing such a thing. Mu Ching undeniably focused his whole heart and mind on cultivation, improving his martial arts, expanding his territory, and growing his believer base. Furthermore, he and Shilian practiced the same cultivation method, and Mu Ching would never even consider ruining his cultivation by touching a woman. Okay. However, Mu Ching clearly knew Lan Cheng. That was definitely true. But with so few clues, Shilian could only shake his head and descend from the heavenly court. With the fetus spirit subdued, and Lan Ying and Geza settled in the wealthy merchant's abode with food and drink, there was nothing to worry about. Nevertheless, it wasn't good to be away for too long. If Shilian took his time returning, the wealthy merchant would probably start grousing about his absence. Thus, the moment Shilian descended, he went straight to the town of Puqi. When the wealthy merchant saw him, he immediately clutched his hands and cried out in excitement, "Dao Zhang, you're a master, a master! You slept in my concubine's chambers last night, and the doors were all locked. Yet this morning, when we opened them, I couldn't believe my eyes. You disappeared into thin air. Strong, too strong. So, did you catch the monster?" "It is caught, don't worry. Everything is fine now," Shilian replied. "How are the 2 children I brought with me?" It was like the wealthy merchant had received absolution, and he cried joyously, "Good! They're very good kids. They didn't eat much at all. Dao Zhang, where's your Thousand Lights temple? I'm going to donate and offer my gratitude. From today onward, I will proudly wear my title as one of your temple's devotees, and let none dispute that devotion." Shilian didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but no matter what, he had increased his number of worshippers, and this one was rich too, so he was feeling rather glad. He lectured the wealthy merchant on the topic of virtue, discouraged him from continuing to chase lascivious pleasures, and advised him to be more devoted and loving to his wife and family. Finally, he told him to visit Puqi's shrine on another day, after which Shilian left with Lan Ying and Geza in tow. The trio returned to Puqi village. Shilian placed that "Please donate and help with renovations" sign in a more conspicuous spot in front of Puqi's shrine, in hopes that when the wealthy merchant came, he would see it straight away. But the moment he pushed open the doors to enter the shrine, he sensed something different about the place. As they entered the shrine, indeed, it was vastly different. The floors had been swept, the altar table and chairs wiped, the dust cleared, and even the trash in the corner had been cleaned out. It was like the river snail girl had paid a visit. Everything was too clean. Even Qi-Rong was gone. With Qi-Rong's disappearance, it was like the entire place had become that much more spacious and bright. Even the air had cleared somewhat. In his arms, Geza was carrying meat pies he had especially brought from town, and when he peeked in and didn't see anyone, he grew anxious. "Da, Gega, where's my dad?" Shilian immediately turned. He hadn't even stepped out the door before he sensed the chilling glint of an oncoming assault. He instantly drew Feng Shen to strike back. Clang! That chilling glint was struck high into the air, falling to the ground dozens of meters away. He had unsheathed Feng Shen as fast as lightning and sheathed it with equal speed. He let out a puff of breath, but was immediately puzzled. That's it? No more follow-up moves? He went to inspect said chilling glint properly. After he struck, it had wound up crookedly planted in the earth. The curved silver arch seemed more and more familiar as he closed the distance between them. Oh my god, Scout just barked so loud. Shilian brought the 2 children over, and when he clearly saw the blade, he immediately knelt beside it. "Isn't this Ming?" he exclaimed. "What's wrong?"
Ow.
Asking a scimitar what's wrong was an extremely odd sight. A few farmers walking past gave Shilian odd looks and elbowed each other serendipitously. "Look at that man, he's talking to a blade." "Yeah, I see it. Don't bother with him. Let's get out of here." But Shilian had to ask, because Ming's entire blade body was shaking violently, even the silver-lined eye on the hilt. It shook harder by the minute, like it had contracted a deadly disease. Shilian reached out in spite of himself, worried. Did I hurt you just now? The scimitar shook more and more uncontrollably. Shilian was at a loss for how to respond, and he gently stroked along the blade's spine. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I didn't see it was you. I won't do it again. After stroking it a few times, Ming's eyes squinted, and the trembling finally stopped. Shilian then asked, Where's your master? Suddenly a voice came from behind. Pay it no mind. Shilian looked back and immediately rose to his feet, surprised and delighted. Sunlong, what brings you here? Behind him was a youth who strolled easily towards Shilian with an air of playful arrogance. It was Hua Cheng. He had once more tied his black hair into a crooked ponytail, and was dressed in a white tunic, his red outer jacket tied around his waist. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing those firm, pale white arms, and the tattoo on one of them. Let me drink. As he walked, the little silver bells on his boots jingled capriciously. He looked very much like a strapping, free-spirited lad next door. He smiled at Shilian, a stalk of grass dangling from his lips. Guga. Shilian had originally planned on visiting Hua Cheng to give proper thanks after settling the two children, but here he had showed up first. Lazily, Hua Cheng sauntered to his side and pulled the silver scimitar from the ground with a single hand. He looked it over, then rested it on his shoulder. Guga is busy here. There's no need to trouble yourself to make the trip when I can come over on my own. You also forgot this. A bamboo hat hung on Hua Cheng's back, and he removed it to hand it over. Shilian had forgotten it at the mansion of the wealthy merchant, and he was slightly taken aback. It completely slipped my mind, he said hurriedly. Thanks for going to the trouble. As he spoke, he suddenly remembered what he had told Hua Cheng after a certain incident the night before. I'm looking for my bamboo hat. My bamboo hat is missing. This had been nonsense uttered in a state of confusion, but Hua Cheng actually had gone and found his bamboo hat. Shilian felt a wave of embarrassment and feared Hua Cheng would tease him for it. Fortunately, Hua Cheng didn't even mention the incident and changed the subject with a smile. Guga picked up 2 more kids, he commented as he patted Guza's head, ruffling his hair into a mess. Guza seemed to be scared of Hua Cheng, and he rushed to hide behind Shilian. Shilian chided him. Don't worry, this Guga is a good person. Nah, I'm a very bad person, Hua Cheng replied. Although that was what he said, he flicked his hand and a tiny silver butterfly flipped out of his sleeve. Fluttering its little wings, it flew errantly towards Guza. Guza's inky little eyes bulged as he stared in fixated wonder at the tiny silver butterfly, and he reached out to try and catch it in spite of himself. With that, his suspicion towards Hua Cheng dropped significantly. Hua Cheng nonchalantly glanced at Long Ying, but this gaze was quite different from the one he turned on Guza. When Hua Cheng looked at Long Ying, his eyes were cold and sharp, utterly unfriendly. Long Ying lowered his head and shrank behind Shilian anxiously. If you're gonna come, just come, Shilian said, bamboo hat in hand. What are you doing, cleaning Puchi's shrine? It was just a bit of tidying, Hua Cheng replied. Don't you think everything feels so much more refreshing now that all the trash is cleared out? Shilian remembered the missing Qirong and wondered, did Hua Cheng actually throw him out with the garbage? Let me drink again.
Yes, you did.
There was suddenly a wail from behind Puchi's shrine. Hua Cheng, you fucker! Go to hell and get boiled in a pot of frying oil! Murder! Hua Cheng is committing murder! Guza cried, Dad! He dashed over on his little legs, and Shilian hastily followed. A small creek ran behind Puchi's shrine. It was where Shilian usually did laundry and washed rice. At the moment, it was instead Qirong who was being dunked in the water, his body bound tightly by Royer. He desperately tried to keep his head above water and roared for all he was worth. I won't get out! I refuse to get out! I will stay in this body until it dies! I won't surrender! Hua Cheng spat out the stalk of grass. You take yourself for some kind of hero? Useless trash. I captured him a few days ago on some mountain, Shilian explained woefully. He's possessing someone and won't come out. The man is still alive, so if we forcibly rip out Qirong's soul, the flesh won't survive. Honestly, does Song Lang have any idea what we can do? You want ideas on how to make him suffer a fate worse than death? Hua Cheng asked. There's plenty of options. That was obviously a threat. Chi-Rong cussed. "You too? Broken pot with a rotten cover to match. Hearts of snakes and scorpions. Gurgle, gurgle, gurgle." He hadn't finished before he was submerged in the creek again. Whenever Shilian saw Chi-Rong, he was filled with both anger and sorrow, remembering how his mother's corpse had dissolved to ash. Nevertheless, the body belonged to another, so it had to be preserved. Thus, he fished Chi-Rong from the creek and dragged him to the front door of Puchi Shrine. Chi-Rong hadn't eaten for a full day and night, so his stomach was shriveled with hunger. After Hua Chung's bullying, he was full of rage that had no energy. Appearing truly wretched and pathetic, he wolfed down the meat pies Geza had snuck back from the wealthy merchant's house, leaving not a single crumb. Shilian shook his head. He noticed that Chi-Rong's limbs were stiff, probably from some petrification spell cast by Hua Chung. "Roya, return," Shilian called. Roya had spent days binding Chi-Rong and was feeling extremely aggrieved for it. With that call, it immediately whooshed over and wrapped itself in loops around Shilian's whole body like a white snake. Shilian pushed open the door and comforted it as he did so, untying it from his person. All right, I'll give you a bath in a bit. Don't feel bad. Go play over there." Thus, Royer dragged its bandages and listlessly floated to the side. Hua Chung also casually tossed Ming over, and Ming assumed a dignified pose upon landing. Royer had been moping facing the wall, but it suddenly discovered a shimmering silver scimitar leaning against the same wall. It very carefully approached. The eye on... I know.
Why are they flirting?
Their spiritual devices are flirting. The eye on Ming's hilt twirled and looked over, its gaze calculating. Feng Xin remained somber and unmoving, making no show of acknowledging anything. Shilian had spent the past few days studying up on cooking and felt he had perhaps gained considerable insight. His heart was full of confidence. Wanting to show off his skills and properly host Hua Chung, Shilian bade him stay for a meal, to which Hua Chung, of course, cheerfully agreed. Shilian had bought a bunch of groceries on the way back from town, and he piled them on the altar. Picking up the butcher knife, he chopped and sliced, the pots clinking and clanking. The altar table could be used as a desk, kitchen island, and dining table as well. Cutlery could be set upon it. Children could sit all around. One could say it was a table of 100 uses. Hua Chung leaned against the wall and watched for a bit. Finally, he couldn't watch anymore and spoke. "Do you need help?" Shilian was at the height of his fervor and dismissed him. "No need. Royer's help is plenty." To demonstrate, he threw out a few bundles of firewood that hadn't yet been chopped. Pah! Like an attacking viper, the white silk bandage whipped the logs, and chunks of wood originally thick as thighs were instantly chopped into thin sticks of kindling. Having shown off its skills, Royer arched in an odd, exaggerated form in front of Ming and Feng Xin, like it was demonstrating its strength and beauty. Said demonstration didn't last long. Shilian moved again to place a plate on the ground before tossing over a big cabbage. Royer was just about to strike when suddenly Ming's eye flashed. It flew off the ground and whirled out shimmers of silver light. Leaves of cabbage filled the air, and they landed on the plate thinly and cleanly chopped. Shilian squatted to pick up the plate and praised Ming aloud when he saw the results. "Amazing! You cut better than Royer." Royer instantly pressed itself against the wall, looking like someone backing away with nowhere left to run. Ming spun its eye wildly and appeared fully smug, as if it were floating on cloud 9. Feng Xin continued to remain unmoved. Shilian hadn't noticed the little battle between the spiritual weapons, so focused was he on dropping all sorts of different vegetables and seasonings into the pot. However, he still had the mind to ask, "By the way, Sunlong, how long are you staying this time?" Hua Chung had been observing Shilian the entire time. He looked like he wanted to advise him in some way at first, but in the end he smiled and said nothing of the sort. "Depends. If nothing's going on in Ghost City, I'll stick around to play for a few days. I hope Guga won't mind me hanging around." "Why would I?" Shilian hastily assured him. "As long as you don't mind my place being a bit cramped." Shilian chatted animatedly, telling Hua Chung all about how Lan Chong threw around blame and caused trouble the moment she set foot in the Palace of Divine Might. Of course, he refrained from mentioning how he himself had been accused, as well as the whole business with dripping blood on Yan Zhen. Then again, he remembered Jinwu saying Hua Chung had planted a spy in the heavenly realm, so maybe Hua Chung already knew everything that had transpired. Fortunately, Hua Cheng only looked contemplative and made no show of whether or not he already knew. Julian asked idly, Sun Lang, who do you think the father of this fetus spirit is? Hua Cheng looked up and smiled faintly. Hard to say. Maybe that golden belt really was just something she picked up off the ground. A vague response like that wasn't remotely Hua Cheng's usual style, and it rather puzzled Shilian. But soon the bubbling pot stole his focus. After 2 incense time, he opened the cover to the pot. Usually, all Chi Rong ate were offerings that the villagers had made to Shilian. It was never anything more than steamed buns and pickles, noodles and eggs, wild fruits and other such things, but at least it was food fit for humans. The moment the pot cover opened and the smell of its contents wafted outside Puchi Shrine, Chi Rong started screaming curses. God fucking Shilian, black-hearted snow lotus! You might as well just stab me dead right now! So, acting good by fishing me out was all to make me suffer this torture? Yeah, I've seen through you! Before opening the pot cover, Shilian had been full of confidence. Now he doubted himself again. He had tried his best and exerted so much effort, but it had still resulted in this entree. Hua Cheng was watching. Whatever should he do? Was he really going to make Hua Cheng eat something like this? Listening to Chi Rong scream bloody murder, Shilian became even more demoralized. Seeing that Hua Cheng had crossed his arms and was about to go outside, Shilian raised a hand to stop him. Never mind him, Shilian sighed, and portioned out a bowl of the substance that had formed within the pot. Don't eat anything from this pot. Just wait for me for a second. Then he went outside. He ushered Gaza and Lung Ying to go get a bucket of water, sending them away from the premises. Shilian squatted down with the bowl, looking pleasant and airy. Little cousin, it's time to eat. Chi Rong was shocked and terrified in equal measure. What? What are you doing? What are you planning? Shilian, I'm warning you. A human life is at stake here. You better think this through. Whoever the hell can stomach that shit will break free from the bondage of the 3 realms, flee the wheel of Dharma. No one... Chi Rong trailed off when he saw Hua Cheng ladle himself a full bowl, then sit next to the altar table inside the shrine and take a bite, his face unchanging and steady as the mountains. Chi Rong was shaken to the core. A thought he'd never had before flashed through his mind. As expected of a supreme. Shilian pushed the bowl against Chi Rong's face as he said calmly, It's fine, if you don't want to eat it, as long as you come out, that is. That was never going to happen. Chi Rong clamped his teeth shut, but Shilian squeezed his cheeks and easily forced open his mouth, dumping the contents of the bowl straight down his throat. A sharp scream shot to the skies above Puchi Shrine. The bowl in Shilian's hand sat empty. Chi Rong lay sprawled on the ground, wearing a twisted, scrunched-up expression. Even his voice was hoarse, like an old man wasting away. I hate... Seeing as Chi Rong still refused to exit the body, even with a full bowl of Shilian's cooking forced down his throat, Shilian didn't know whether to be reassured or anguished. He really wanted to force Chi Rong out as soon as possible, but since he hadn't succeeded, it almost seemed to prove that this dish he had cooked with all his heart wasn't so bad after all. Perhaps it was even worth being proud of. Turning around, Shilian saw that the bowl in Hua Cheng's hand was almost empty. He was eating leisurely, looking at Shilian as he did. Shilian's eyes lit up and he rose to his feet. Sun Lang, are you finished? He thought he had botched the meal at first, and been too embarrassed to offer it to Hua Cheng. Who knew Hua Cheng would take the initiative to help himself? Hua Cheng chuckled. Yeah. Shilian prodded very carefully for his opinion. What do you think? Hua Cheng slurped up the remaining broth and smiled. Not bad. The taste is a bit strong. Try making it a little milder next time. Shilian sighed a breath of relief and nodded. All right, I'll remember that. Thanks for your feedback. Chi Rong groaned. Ugh. That's the end.
He hates gay people.
The spiritual weapons playing is so cute to me. They were just hanging out and showing off. And then Fang Xin, the sword, was just sitting there. It's like, I'm not doing
Silly.
this. Let's watch Vampire.
Oh, okay.